the roles to nothing, and we're defaulting the user values to nothing. Now the user values aren't tied to either of these, so I think what we just do is we just rebuild this all the time anytime this changes. Okay, we don't have to, but I think that's what it does if we go look at the script. So alright, let's go back here and let's take a look at the edit roles method before the form gets shown. Okay, I think we do have a before data init, so let's look at those first. Okay, because that's the order that this is going to run in. Okay, so before data init's going to go first. Okay, and here we're going to remove all the options of our roles. Okay, and we're going to construct our JSON call here again to go get the Appfuse select boxes based on that application. So here we're building the privilege role user values page, or this is the add form. Okay, so you see we're just doing this. It's going to look exactly like it does in the tag lib right now. All these values are going to get set. See here, like I said, we're setting these to a default. We're setting these to a default. Okay, so now after that runs, then we're going to run our so I think once that's set up, these guys are going to run. So then we're going to go get the Appfuse select. Okay, this is where we're setting it up here, and then the Appfuse select is going to run. Okay, and here this is going to just build the options. It's going to run that query actually first. So this JSON call here is going to run. This one. Appfuse select right here. So this is the one that's going to run. It's going to get all the privileges for this application, and we're going to show those privileges. Okay. Then anytime it's changed, this is going to run. But before that, I know it's getting kind of complicated. So before init data is going to run, it's going to set up our columns to look just like they do here. Okay, because like I said, we need to flip these to be read only after it's all done when we edit. So before init data is going to run, we're going to set up our column values. It's going to load that select box. Okay, then before the form is actually shown, we're going to take one last chance here, and we're going to run this. And I think all this does is clears out the roles select box and then populates the field names. Okay, so here we go. So sure enough, it's going to clear out the roles and then call load CUV select, which is going to load the custom user value field. So if we go look back here and we do a plus, so here's the data init's going to fill in these, we're going to populate these columns. It's going to run this select and get all the privileges based on this application. And you see we cleared out our roles and we populated our user fields. Now this won't let you submit anything unless you pick a value. So you're going to need a privno, and even if you pick one and don't select a role, you're not going to be able to do that. So after you make the change here, we're going to run that other code that's going to populate these roles. So let's go look at that. So the function changed event. So here's priv select change. So we get our selected privno, okay, and then we construct, we get our application ID. Now you see here we're building a model that we're going to use to run the query, and it's going to include the privilege that we just selected and the app ID, because we want the privileges and roles based on the privilege and the app that was selected. And you can see here we're just reconstructing some HTML. So every time you change, this function is going to run and reconstruct the roles tab. And so this is how we're tying all of this together with our in this particular tab, where we get the privileges on the get-go, and then we have a change function running when one of those changes. But just before the form gets shown, we clear out the roles so that we have to wait for a change to happen before we populate it. But since the field values are not really associated to any priv role combination, we show those all the time when we set it up. So okay, so we already have a couple there. Now let's take a look what happens when we do an edit. Okay, so you see here now, if we'll do an edit, we're going to go back to update at priv role user value. Okay, now when we update, we're basically doing the same thing we've been doing. We're just flipping some fields around. We're making some hidden, we're making some shown, and we're making the ones that are shown read-only so they can't be changed. And in this case, I don't think we're allowing anything to change other than the status. So now if you want, you could make it so that you could modify the field like we did in the app role owners, where you could change the ownership but not change the role ID. But in this case, I didn't want them to change anything but the status. So here you could change the status to inactive and submit. And now the code that actually builds these requests, there's another web app that would build the request, will not select any of these. Okay, so of course we had the problem here where we were showing privileges that were inactive, and we need to fix that here. But the code on the other side, that already smart enough to know that this would no longer be an option to show up in the custom values. Okay, so you can see how we can use the JQuery functions to plug in and customize how we want our forms to display, and of course how we would have to rebuild our JSON queries based on the values we need to pass in by doing these kind of tricks here, where we have a hidden ID value, we get that value, and then we append it onto our query. So we're basically doing manually what Struts2 was doing for us here with the Struts2 URL tags. So he was already appending the application ID for us, and of course the priv ID, we were picking it up on the way out. So I think that's pretty much covers all of the different craziness we've done here with customizing our forms on the fly. So once again, the order that this is going to happen is the form's going to get recreated. Before init data is going to run, we're going to customize our column values by using set col props in the grid. Then just before the form gets displayed, we're going to clear out, we're going to call this JavaScript, which is going to clear out the roles, populate the field values. Okay. Then when a user selects an option in the privileges, it's going to cause a change event to run, which is going to make a JSON call again based on priv and app and load the roles for that privilege in that application. Okay, and that's when we add a record. When we edit a record, the before init data is going to run. It's going to update our column values to change and basically flip everything around, remove the selects, make the fields read-only, and then yeah, well, that's all we're doing here in this case. And of course the form's going to get recreated before we start. Then, and in both cases, when the form gets submitted, we're going to update our model and send that back to Struts2 so it knows what the model is. And again, in both cases, after those are submitted, we're going to check our return messages back from the grid options that we did, so we can display any error messages in our custom forms. Whew, okay. So we're into 18 minutes. I'm probably going to have to split this video to put it on YouTube. So we covered all this, and I think what I'll do is I'm going to take a break, get some coffee, and then I'm going to come back and cover a little bit more about our Spring and Hibernate configuration and what that looks like. And then I'll put this code up on the internet so all you guys can download it. See you later.